All right, welcome to another edition of the Hardwood Huddle. We are back from our All-Star breaks, and you can't get a better All-Star lineup than the group that we have right now. We have Max Rundle from the backsportspages.com, and as always, we have the Sith Lord himself, Darth Vader, Lord Helmet, and I think I don't know what other names we can go with. I like Lord Helmet. Lord Helmet's the most underrated bad guy character in a comedy movie. Rick Moranis, thank you for that.
Doing the stunt doubles tonight, I'll tell you
that. Yeah. But his name is Bill Ingram, and he's here. And boys, the NBA's back at it this weekend, starting Thursday night. And man, we have a great lineup across the league. But we have Bill. You and I have not been on since the trade deadline. Moves that happened. We came on just to discuss the Harden trade.
We were, but not on the Nets Insider. Anyway, we
were on the Nets Insider. Yeah, that's right. We were together, but we were together on another show.
Right.
We don't figure. So we have not been together since the trade deadline and the All-Star break. What did we think of some of the moves that we saw here?
Well, I think most of them were underwhelming, especially when you talk about Danny Ainge brought into Utah to make the big move that was going to push them to whatever it's going to take to push them to the championship. And that they managed to move Joe Ingles, who was hurt anyway. And then you had them, Dallas was supposed to make a big move because they brought in Nico from Nike and he was going to blow us away with everything. And that didn't happen. So, and Randy pulled the plug. Did you pull the plug on your own show? The dog did it. It was the mascot, wasn't
it? I always pull the plug on the show. Look, we had that situation with obviously the Nets and the Sixers, and look, there's a lot of trades that happened. I think there's a lot of trades that helped a lot of teams. There's also a bunch of teams that didn't make trades that could have helped their teams, like the Lakers, like the Knicks, and Max is covering for us for the backsportspage.com is covering the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland made a deal right before the deadline and getting LeVert. Max, talk to us about that deal. What does that do to help the Cavs?
I think the funny part about this deal is it didn't happen on deadline day, and the day before this trade went through, I wrote a piece all about how the Cavs shouldn't go all in and make a trade, and that they should be patient and stick to their guns, stick to the assets they have. But I capped off that article by saying, if they do make a move, don't sell the farm. Keep some of your big pieces. And they really did that. They did that very well. They moved the expiring contract of Ricky Rubio, which is a sad sight to see, but it had to happen sooner or later. And then you move. Here's the one downside of this trade. And it's not really something most people will ever be like, oh, what a bad move. It's the second round pick they gave up. They gave up the Rockets' second rounder this year and their first rounder this year, I believe. That's basically two end of the first round picks right there that could really add to some depth to this Cleveland team that really needs it.
Yeah, and not only that, but Cleveland has been, I think if you had to look at the two teams in this league that surprised everybody this season, it's the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Memphis Grizzlies. Nobody expected Memphis to be as good as they are, and nobody expected Cleveland to be as good as they are. Bill and I sort of predicted that the Bulls were going to be there. No one was expecting the Bulls to be in the top 6 or 7.
Yeah, I actually love Cleveland and the way they've done it. Where it's been a team that it was always about, well, can we get LeBron? Can we bring in somebody else with him? The shortcut way of trying to win a championship. I've always hated that. And I think the talk over All-Star break, because it was in Cleveland, about LeBron coming back, I thought, well, isn't that special? But if there's ever been a time the Cleveland Cavaliers did not need LeBron James, it's now. And especially with Brian Windhorst, who I think his only job is to take dictation from LeBron, saying, oh, the Lakers have to move him this summer. Yeah, right. You're going to move that contract on a guy who has lost a step. Certainly, I mean, you talk, Maxwell, about not selling the farm. You would have to sell the farm to take on LeBron's contract. And there is zero reason for Cleveland, of all teams, to do that.
No, I totally agree. I think just the thought, though, and it's so doable because of, like you're saying, his contract, and he's not going to force a buyout. He's not going to force a trade in the offseason. But just the thought of, in a obscure world where LeBron got bought out this year, it's not going to happen. I understand that. And then he signs with Cleveland. The Eastern Conference would lose their mind, most especially DeMar DeRozan. I think they're immediate NBA championship, like, deserve it. They're front runners if that were to happen, but it's obviously not going to.
I mean, what you're really talking about, and I see Randy who's pulled his own plug again. I think it's our new mascot. Oh, he's back. Yeah, the mascot did it again.
Yeah, I figure I'll take the him being on camera over the barking in the background.
Yeah.
So,
And
making his Hardwood Huddle debut, ladies and gentlemen, Henry the Wonder Dog, the official mascot of the Hardwood Huddle. Bill, I know you got a dog too.
There will be T-shirts.
Yeah, there will be T-shirts of Henry. You have a dog too, right, Bill?
Oh yeah, he's asleep on top of a chair over there right now. I know.
and Max's school does not allow him to have dogs on campus. So here's the other thing too about Cleveland, which I think is undervalued and underappreciated, is the job that JB Bickerstaff has done with this team.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yes, they're above 500. They're right in the mix in the Eastern Conference. But you look at what they had to work with. Nobody gave Cleveland a chance this year. Bickerstaff said they're sticking to their guns. They want to build their program. And the program is really doing really strong. And Max even said it to me before we came on the air, because I was like, well, you know, they got their big guys. They don't have a 7-footer. They have a couple 6'11" guys. But they're playing like 7-footers. You're 6'11", 7 foot tall. Unlike Joel Embiid and Giannis and Karl Anthony Towns, who wins the 3-point shootout, we have 6'11", 7-footers who are playing in the paint and playing near the basket. Cleveland's in the top half of the league in rebounding for a reason. It's because their bigs are rebounding.
Well, that's the thing. You don't need a big to back somebody down and dunk on everybody like you needed in the 80s and early 90s. But you do need rebounds. I mean, you have them. And that's where a move like the Mavs made to get rid of Kristaps Porzingis. Now, granted, kind of like Anthony Davis, he only plays maybe 60% of any given season. But they got rid of Kristaps Porzingis and got no rebounding. And I really love Spencer Dinwiddie pre-injury. I didn't think the Nets needed Kyrie Irving with Dinwiddie prior to his injury. We'll see if he can get back to that form. But Bertans is not a rebounder. He doesn't even know what the paint looks like. You know, there's a move where I'm just going, okay, Nico was this Nike guy who had all these connections, and Dallas was finally gonna. I'm like, Donnie Nelson could have made that.
So what you're saying is the only paint that he knows is the paint that's at Home Depot. Gotcha. Okay.
So that's an area where, and the Bulls recognized that last year when they got Vukovic from Orlando, and you look at the difference. I mean, obviously DeRozan has put them over the top, but even if DeRozan wasn't playing MVP level basketball, we talked in our preseason edition of this show about how Chicago was going to be a home court team for sure, because Vukovic gives them that anchor in the middle. You know?
And also it complements DeRozan, it complements Levine to a point where there's not a lot of teams where you can say there's option 1, there's option 2, there's option 3. There's a lot of teams in this league that have option 1 and option 2, and everything has a dramatic fall off. The Dallas Mavericks have option 1, and that's it.
And that's it.
That's it. You look at the Memphis Grizzlies. Yes, they have Ja. They have Ja Morant. And the number 2, number 3, number 4 guys all seem to come in through committee.
Well, you know who 2, 3, and you know which guys are 2, 3, and 4. But on any given night, Dylan Brooks can be number 2. He can be number 3. Those guys take turns doing that. And when you have a player who is as amazing at scoring the ball and distributing the ball as Ja Morant is, you know, there's no better place to see the difference that distributor mentality makes than Houston when they signed Dennis Schroeder. And that first game afterwards, everybody was involved in the offense in Houston. And they were all after the game like, that's fun. Like, oh my God, the ball moved and I got the ball to rim. And where before Houston was doing a lot of one-on-one. Okay, pass the ball to Jalen Green. Now he'll try to go one-on-one. Now Kevin Porter's going to try to go one-on-one. Now Christian Wood's going to try to go one-on-one. And there wasn't a concept of the point guard. And when you have that mentality that John Morant has, which is I can dominate you myself, but I can also dominate with my pass.
Right.
It's everybody around him an equal opportunity lethal number 2.
Yeah, and also the key with that too is you look around the league and some of the other teams. Look, you look at Milwaukee. I know Lopez is out right now, but you look at Milwaukee, obviously having Giannis, Middleton,
Holiday.
Drew Holiday. Then you had Lopez. You had 4 options there. That's why they were right there for the championship.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the Nets right now. The Nets have options through the top 8, their top 8 players.
They just have to be healthy and vaccinated.
Yeah, that's the key.
Too soon, Kyrie? Too soon?
I heard the mandates are getting laxer up there in New York, that he might be back even without it soon.
Yes, yeah, there's talk about mid-March him being back on the court. And look, if you get the Nets healthy, up, lineup number, 1 through 8, 1 through 9, that's a real dangerous lineup. But it's up to Steve Nash to not only play head coach, but he has to do his best, Phil Jackson, of just getting people to mesh. Dragic needs to have the ball in his hand to be effective.
Yep.
Kyrie needs to sort of have the ball in his hand to be effective. Kevin Durant needs to have the ball in his hand to be effective. Aldridge likes to play that pick and roll, give him to him around the foul line jump shot, and he'll be automatic from there.
But he's not a guy that wants the ball either. That was why San Antonio didn't work when they built around. When they got him, it was like, okay, now they've got their Tim Duncan reincarnated, and LaMarcus just didn't want it. He just wasn't willing to be that number. No,
LaMarcus Aldridge would have been happy on a team being a number 2, number 3 option. Yep. He never wanted to be the number 1.
That's why it's worked so well for him, because he can get his 10 or 12 points, and the team is fine. They needed him to get 20 or 30, and he just wasn't going to do it.
On this Nets team, he would rather just be a contributor than having to be a focal point. And that's, meanwhile, Blake Griffin came out to the media locally here saying he wants to be more involved and help be a focal point of this team. But someone made a comment to him the other day saying, "How can you be? Your knees have more burn on them than a 7-year tire on a car." You know what I mean? Like it doesn't work.
Blake Griffin's best offensive move right now is scaring opponents in that he still has knees and will about to dunk on you, but then everyone realizes he can't do that anymore. And they just stay there.
He'll go up. Looks like he'll go up for the dunk and he just lays it in. It's like, it's like the biggest tease in the world. So, transitioning now, looking at, LeBron James, we were talking about him earlier and the situation with the Lakers and them not making a move. And there's been a lot of talk throughout All-Star Weekend, especially out in Cleveland, that, hey, LeBron might be interested in coming back. And he said, let's not shut the door of a Cleveland comeback. And I had heard that Dan Gilbert this was more shocking to Dan Gilbert than anybody out there. Bill and Max, I have to ask your opinion. Is LeBron just doing this to put the scare into the Lakers?
Well, I think that's part of it. I think he's also trying to make sure Bronny gets drafted because his son has fallen, his draft status has fallen dramatically. And by saying, I don't think trading him, I mean, my God, trading him is what team can trade for him and have anything left?
I can name one.
Which one?
The Thunder.
Yeah, I was going to say the Oklahoma Thunder, who happens to have 37 of the next 45 draft picks.
Kyrie Irving. But, I mean, other than that, which doesn't make sense to have Kevin Durant and LeBron on the same team.
No.
I just don't see that. What I don't understand that was viable was I look at the point guards who are available, and John Wall would be a great complement to LeBron and Anthony Davis when he's there. which Russell Westbrook is not a great compliment to either of those players. And that's not a knock on Russ. They brought Russ into a situation that was not a good situation for him. There are many good situations for Russell Westbrook in the NBA. That was not one of them.
I just love how you said that, though. You're like, Anthony Davis when he's there. Like, Max, Bill and I were talking earlier. When you sign up for Anthony Davis, you're not getting 82 games out of him. You're getting maybe 60 games out of him, if you're lucky. If you're lucky, Anthony Davis is still at one point one of the most I don't want to say dominant, but one of the more. I'll go dominant. He was a dominant big man in this league. You watched him in those early years in New Orleans, especially in those playoff games. You did not want to play against Anthony Davis, and now, Anthony Davis is sort of a shell of himself, and I don't know if he would be able to go play on another team and be the guy.
I just think the issue with Anthony Davis is he just thinks he's better than he is. He thinks he's like KD-esque in the sense that he's okay to do those post fades. He's okay to shoot those open threes they give him. He's not like that. He's never been like that. What he is, though, is one of the most skilled post scorers in the league. Get him down on the block. Nobody outside of, Rudy Gobert, Giannis, Joel, like there's very few guys that can guard him outside of those three. He's crafty down low. There's no doubt about it. He's got the speed to get that first step and move around people. He just thinks he's got a jump shot, and he doesn't at all, in my opinion. I won't lie. I'm someone who, coming up as a Bucks fan, I always thought Giannis was going to surpass Anthony Davis. And this was like peak Anthony Davis before he was traded. Everyone's like, oh, Anthony Davis is so good, best two-way player in the league. I'm like, give Giannis a year. This guy's just so much better. He's not going to have the jumper, but you saw it in the All-Star game. Giannis tries. That's just one bad way to put it, but it's the best way to put it. Mm-hmm. It's just Anthony Davis is not that guy. He was that guy for the bubble half season, if you want to call it that, maybe. Mm-hmm. But he's not going to be that guy ever again. And you can say all the rumors you want. And like you said about the John Wall prospect, I'm actually a fan they didn't do that move. I think giving up on Westbrook is fine. You could have done that. Giving up on him for John Wall, I think, is just a lateral move. All it does is take away a little bit of a less selfish offensive player. It's not like he's good at defense. It's not like he's going to go out there and strip everyone. That's what they need. They need Drew Holiday, which they're not going to get. They need someone around those lines. And realistically, you're not trading LeBron. You can give up 4 first-rounders, and it's not going to happen. You should trade AD. It's a bold thing to say, but if he comes back and shows a little bit of his old self, there's a team out there that wants him, and they'll give a lot for him.
That's always true. There's always a team that will pay any price for any player. But I got to tell you, if I'm serious about building a winner in Anthony Davis, you're going to spend top dollar to get, like we've been saying, 60 games. Not on my team. Now, you're right. Point made. Somebody will do it. Sacramento will do it. Somebody,
Minnesota. Minnesota would do it.
Dallas would do it. Yeah, for sure.
If this was 3 years ago, I would have said Charlotte would do it. But
yep.
Charlotte, I think Mitch Kupchak figured it out over there, and
Charlotte a piece or two away.
Yeah. I think Charlotte is a team to watch. I think Charlotte reminds me right now of, I would say, Memphis. You're just getting young players, and you're just getting a couple guys here and there. Gordon Hayward had played very well for them at times, and obviously Ball is playing very well. We now know which one of the Ball family members is better in the league. Lonzo Ball is not really turning heads right now in Chicago, but his brother is, and in Charlotte. Guys, there's one team that we seem to sleep on right now, and they've played a lot better. And Bill and I have sort of ripped them apart because we had higher expectations for them. But the Atlanta Hawks. Let's dive into this. We'll go to Bill, then we'll go to Max. What is wrong with the Atlanta Hawks right now, Bill?
Well, I think one thing, I don't know what Cam Reddish was doing to the team. Whatever it was so bad they moved him for nothing. But they were immediately better without him on the roster. So something was going on there. I thought it was instructive that they were trying to move John Collins, or at least his name came up. Whether that means they were actually trying to move him or not is debatable, but his name came up at the trade deadline. You overpaid him. Everyone in the world knew you overpaid him. You're committing a lot of dollars to a player who doesn't do what those dollars could buy in the market. Granted, you're a market that's not, it seems like they're a small market. It's Atlanta. They're not a small market, but in terms of drawing talent, they're not the Lakers or the Knicks or the Nets, or, they don't draw talent. So sometimes you have to overpay, Dallas does, to keep guys that you have. But they surprised everybody last year, and they're not surprising anybody this year. And when that happens, you have to add a piece, or somebody has to take a step. And neither of those things has happened. But I do think I have a great deal of faith in Nate McMillan. He's an incredible coach, very underrated. And I think when they got Cam out, that opened up some things for Nate McMillan, and that team is figuring it out. And they could also be a team that's dangerous come playoff time.
I think there's one blatant issue with the Hawks. And if I'll just run down this roster here real quick. Tell me who here plays defense. Trae Young, John Collins, Bojan Bogdanovic. DeAndre Hunter was supposed to do it, but he's just not that. As the 4th overall pick, he's not quite developing as quickly as they thought. He's probably leveled out. I haven't watched a lot of him, but he just doesn't seem like what he should be. Kevin Huerter can't play defense. Danilo Gallinari's got to be one of the worst defending big men maybe ever.
Great offensive player. Doesn't know the definition of the word defense.
And he's not great offensive anymore.
No, he was for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I loved him on the Clippers back in the day, and he actually really helped that CP3-led Thunder team, but he's just not that anymore. But like you were saying, Bill, the Hawks are good. The Hawks have the 5th highest field goal percentage, the best 3-point percentage. They just have a terrible defense, 27th defensive rating in the NBA.
And Clint Capella is a capable defender, but he's been injured. So when he's
that's a thing too, by the way. That's a big thing.
They're only relying on rim protection. Yeah. They got Clint Capella there, and they got the Okongwu. Both those guys are good defenders, but they play the same position. You can't have them on the floor at the same time. Either one of them can shoot for anything. I'm surprised they didn't trade John Collins first off. And I think the future of this team is seriously in question, not because of anything they can do offensively. This is an elite offensive team in the NBA. They just can't guard anyone.
Well, I got to throw this out to you guys. Here's the top 10 in the Eastern Conference in order. The Miami Heat, which Bill and I said would be in that spot in the beginning of the year. So kudos to us. We'll take
that a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we'll just take that back. We'll just take that bow now. The Chicago Bulls are 2. The Philadelphia 76ers are 3. The Cleveland Cavaliers 4. Milwaukee 5. Boston 6. Toronto 7. Brooklyn 8. Charlotte 9. Atlanta 10. And the Wizards are 11. And the Knicks are far 12. About 2.5 games back there. Okay, so I asked both of you, looking at the bottom 4, Toronto, Brooklyn, Charlotte, Atlanta, which teams have a good chance of breaking into the top 6 to avoid the play-in?
Well, for me, the obvious answer is Brooklyn, because it's taken so many issues for them to be where they are, especially if New York lifts the vaccine mandate, which they may or may not do. Then Kyrie can play home games. But adding Goran helps make up for some of that too. So, but Toronto is a team that just seems to keep finding ways.
Nurse, baby. Nick Nurse.
Dallas called them to gauge what it would take to get Pascal Siakam, and the answer was like, why is it dial hello, Toronto? Did we lose? Did Putin just attack Canada? What? I think Toronto's a team that is. They've got some toughness, they've got some grit, and I don't think they're getting very far with it. But they are a team that could get into the top 6, perhaps, depending on a matchup in the bubble. It's not the bubble anymore. It's the
play-in.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Max. We're both like, oh, there it is.
They're on the bubble, so I keep thinking bubble, but yeah, right, the play-in situation.
I think you're right. To say the Nets are going to stay at 8 is just absurd. if anything, they'll be at 5. Honestly, Bucks have one of the hardest schedules the rest of the season. I think the Celtics are gonna fall. I think the Raptors are gonna fall. I think the Nets should move up. The Hornets might barely move up. The Hawks should barely move up. I look at this. The Hawks just have to figure out defense. I don't think they will because, like I said, their defense is not. They don't have the team for defense. The Hornets, though, I think getting Harrell is an interesting move. It helps with their big men, but it doesn't help with their defense. They have a very bad defensive rating, also 24th in the NBA. I just look at the Raptors, and I'm not a big fan of them. I don't see it working in the long run. Even if they make some type of run here in the end, they're not going to sustain it. They're going to lose first round badly, most likely. The biggest change I see happening in the entire East, that is, I expect the Bucks to maybe drop a spot or two. I expect the Nets to move all the way back up in there. Who knows what the Cavs are going to do? I am so confused about them, and I cover them. Like, they're just such a weird team. I love it, but it just doesn't really make sense when looking at it. But the one thing we can guarantee is the Nets are going up.
Yeah. And I'm going to throw something else out there. I'm looking at it right now. I think the Nets can make it all the way back up to the 4th seed. You know, they're 4.5 games out. And Bill knows this about Kevin Durant. You can have the rest of the injuries, but you put Kevin Durant with the lineup you have right now, with Seth Curry and Andre Drummond out there, and then you're going to add Ben Simmons and Kyrie Irving and Goran Dragic. Oh, Joe Harris is coming back too. Plus Lamar Aldridge is playing okay right now. Oh, and Patty Mills is playing really well right now too. You can't tell me just adding LeBron James back. Don't forget about Kyrie, Joe Harris, Ben Simmons. You put Kevin Durant with the lineup they have out there right now, they're going to go on a 5-game winning streak.
Yep.
Right off the bat, and they're going to cut that 4.5 game deficit for the 4th seed down to 2.5. It's going to happen. They're going to get back into the top 4, and that's all you really need. I think if you start off on the road in the playoffs, you're digging yourself a hole. But as I say that, before anybody else says that, I also looked at their record at home and away. Brooklyn is 13-15 at home and 18-13 on the road. So maybe it's better that the Nets start the playoffs on the road.
Well, that's one of those stats. It's hard to gauge because you could say, oh well, Kyrie plays on the road, but he hasn't been healthy. So I think it's all Kevin Durant. That to me is, if he can actually. I don't know how bad is it. It seems like every year he's hurt until it's time to really start winning, and then he's not hurt anymore magically. I don't know how many times you can turn it off and turn it on like that. But for my money, if you can keep Kyrie on the sideline, if Kevin Durant is healthy, that record is going to skyrocket because he's still the most dominant player, especially offensively, in the East. And the only player better in the league is Steph Curry. And Steph, does he have the firepower around him? I think that's the question that the Golden State Warriors have to ask. But we know KD does, because the move they made to get whatever Ben Simmons does, that's nice. Thank you. But Seth Curry and Andre Drummond are great additions to that team.
And before we jump off of the Eastern Conference, there's one team in the East we have to talk about that's not in playoff contention, but it seems like we always have to talk about them anyway, is the New York Knickerbockers. And Bill, Max, look, Kemba Walker is now shut down for the season, whether it was injury or whether they want to play for the new guys. There's 3 watches you have to keep an eye on now for New York. You have to look at the Kemba watch and see if he's going to obviously stay in New York or go to another team next year or even retire. 2, the Thibodeau watch. Bill, you and I both said Thibodeau has a way of wearing out his welcome fairly quickly with teams, and this might be the time in New York. And then the third thing is the Julius Randle watch on whether he's going to be with this franchise next year. He's getting paid like a number 1 guy, but he is not a number 1 guy. Max, I'll start with you on this. The Knicks are making headlines right now for all the wrong reasons.
I think the Knicks are an interesting team. They really went for it this offseason, and didn't really get anything. They got Evan Fournier, who's actually played pretty well every time I seem to turn him on.
Every time he plays Boston, he scores 35 points. If they had 82 games against Boston, he'd be the best player in NBA history.
Seriously, I mean, he went nuts that one game where R.J. Barrett hit that bank 3 for the win, which on the subject, this is the first year R.J. Barrett looks like the number 3 overall pick.
And there's a good reason for that. I'm sorry for interrupting you, Max, but Bill and I have said this before. It takes a good 2 or 3 years in this league to get yourself established and to be a real NBA player. It took Kobe Bryant 3 years to figure out himself in the NBA. It took Kevin Garnett 3 years to figure himself out in the NBA. So R.J. Barrett, who came in after a one-and-done situation, is now looking like an NBA player because he's figuring it out, and it takes a few years to get it going. I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
I just think the interesting part about this team, like you said, Randall's just royally overpaid. I personally like Randall. I don't think he's a 1. He's a borderline 2, I would say, being paid like a 1, so they can't really do much about that unless someone goes out of their way to get him. And it's not going to happen because the Kings, the one team that would do some dumb things like that, they just got their own left-handed power forward. I think the future of this team, first off, Kemba's career is over in 2 years at most, is my opinion. It's sad to say it, but he just can't do it anymore.
A genuine good guy in the league, by the way.
Oh, everything I've heard about him, he's a great, great guy. I just think Derrick Rose, not even worth talking about. Derrick Rose is going to Derrick Rose. Who knows what he's going to do? The rest of this team, Obi Toppin's not what Obi Toppin should have been. Mitchell Robinson, I believe he's on a restricted free agent this offseason. He might be unrestricted.
He's a restricted free agent.
I think they should keep that, move Noel, get a different backup center that doesn't cost as much money.
He finds a way to get paid everywhere he goes. I give him credit.
He does.
I don't know
much
how
better
the hell
than
he does it,
Jahlil
but he does
Okafor did.
Yeah.
I just don't understand how he does it. I play a total of 25 games a year and average 3.5 points a game. We're going to give you a 3-year, $35 million contract, my friend. Wait, what? I don't get it.
There's some who was bidding on Nerlens Noel. I saw his contract, and I pinged a friend of mine who's an assistant GM, and I was like, was there a bidding war for the services of Nerlens Noel? And he was like, that was a crazy contract. I was just wondering.
I think that the two Knicks general managers were bidding against each other to see who was going to get
for 2. Well, let's offer him 10. Okay.
You know we work for the same team, right? Oh, okay. So, and just to add one more thing with the Knicks too, and I do this, it's because it's just frustrating because I'm in the New York market and you listen to them. Knicks fans are sort of delusional where they think their guys have more value than they really do around the league. One of my friends who I used to co-host shows with said the Knicks should try and get they might be able to get Jimmy Butler if we put a package around Mitchell Robinson together. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, first off, you're not supposed – before going on air, you're not supposed to be doing drugs. It's a bad thing. You don't know what's going to come out. It's like tweeting or texting while you're drunk. It's not going to do anybody any good. Don't do it. And, look, Mitchell Robinson's a decent player, but we're not trading him for Jimmy Butler. Let's just put that aside. But
that's
I just think –
Daryl Morey type deal. Daryl thinks everything he has is worth twice as much as anything you have.
And by the way, it felt so good as a Net fan to see another team be on the hot seat and have to overpay for a player that they wanted for once.
Mm-hmm.
It felt really good to see that because the Nets have had their hand to the fire with how many deals we got shafted on, including Jason Kidd going to Dallas.
Yeah.
The Nets lost that trade.
I think, Daryl Morey had to go buy underwear after that because he had nothing left. Whoa, James Harden better show up and be freaking Kobe Bryant, or that is going to go down as one of the worst. And I don't think that happened. Of course, James was in Houston, and I covered him and knew him, and I was never impressed. Max, you talk about defense, and I'm fond of saying that James Harden was social distancing long before COVID-19. He did it on the defensive end. He didn't know, why do you guys keep running down there? We can't score down there. He didn't know why. And the fact that now he's overweight and he's lost this and changed the rules so he can't just travel all over the place and get to the free throw line every time. I think Doc Rivers has his hands full.
And not only that, but James Harden's already come out and said next year he'd like to be traded to Cleveland. So
I'm still hoping for those sweepstakes. That would turn the Cleveland Cavs around. I mean, that would be quite the addition.
I just figured it's, he likes to plan these things out a year in advance. Last year he said, this Brooklyn's great. Philadelphia's going to look really good next year.
Yeah.
Now he's sitting there saying, wow, I love Philadelphia. You know where I like more? Cleveland. That's right. And then the following year he's going to say, wow, Orlando's looking pretty good right now. I can't wait to go there. So, just really quick, just jump into the Western Conference. We touched on Memphis before. Obviously, Chris Paul banged up a little bit. He's going to be out. The Suns, the hottest team in the NBA. It's winners of their last 7 straight. And, they're doing it on both sides of the floor. Bill, how much does the Paul injury hurt them? And will this help the 6.5 back Warriors possibly make up some ground?
Well, I think number one, you have to look at Cameron Payne, who's coming back from injury, and he's a steady hand. He's not Chris Paul, but he's a very capable starting NBA point guard when he needs to be. They're going to drop a few games now. We're not playing at the same level with Cameron Payne as we were with Chris Paul, but the other pieces are still there. They're not going to collapse or anything. I think the Warriors can make up some ground if, they're missing Draymond Green, and that's a huge part of their game. It's why, you're seeing Steph having some off nights and Clay struggling sometimes. They don't have that toughness in there helping create openings. The team, I think, this has got to be the time when the Utah Jazz say, okay, Draymond Green is out. The Warriors are going to drop some games. Now you're missing Chris Paul. The Suns are going to drop some games. It is time for this Utah Jazz team that always feels so disrespected and nobody gives us the respect we deserve. You better go out and damn well earn the respect you think you get, or you're not going to be there next year. I mean, they can start with Spider Mitchell. Rudy go. If this team, they have depth, they have shooting, they have the premier defensive player in the league. They have an incredible scorer. They have a great. Mike Conley is a great setup guy. They have depth off the bench. If you can't get it done, it's time to start over in Utah. So they better go out there and show. And this is their chance. They're finally healthy. Go do it. That's the team that needs to make up some ground with, especially Chris Paul, but also Draymond Green now.
I think the interesting part about the West is it's just how dominant the Suns have been. I think, sure, they'll maybe reduce it to like 3.5 games, but they're just a really good team. And trust me, this is before I was covering the Cavs last year, a little bit into covering the Magic. I'm sitting on the couch as a die-hard Bucks fan watching the Suns team. They just overperformed last year. What they do in the offseason, they got so much better. They really did. And part of the reason I thought was they really found themselves some good big men. JaVale McGee's being slept on like crazy. He's one of those Nerlens Noel's type of guys that someone doesn't think deserves to get paid. He deserves to get paid. He's a bona fide modern center. He just makes everything you give him. I think the weird part with the Warriors is they're great. They got Steph. That's really all you need. You got Clay there too. If Wiseman is anywhere around the corner, I have no clue. Correct me if I'm wrong. I would love if Wiseman.
They're saying he'll be back, maybe this weekend.
I'd love to see Wiseman be whatever we thought Wiseman was going to be, because I remember in his 3 college games, he was dangerous defensively, even with the shot a little bit. He could really boost that Warriors team to above and beyond what we've really ever seen with them. But there's no doubt in my mind the team that should take advantage of this the most is the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies, sure, they're overperforming. Anyone can argue that. The Grizzlies have one of the easiest schedules the rest of the year. They have a pretty cakewalk schedule, I would say. And I think this stretch will show that they're like a bona fide top of the Western Conference team for now and for the future. And this is coming off of a trade in the offseason I did not like. I really didn't. I loved Jonas Valanciunas. I thought he was slept on like crazy. And here them going out and getting a defensive only rebounding center, and it's exactly what they needed. You look at the Grizzlies and the Hawks, what's the biggest difference? Sure, the Hawks have a couple more bigger name guys that are just lethal scorers. It's the fact that they actually have defense. Their offenses are almost the exact same thing, but I don't know. I think the Grizzlies really do make a move, and I think by the end of Chris Paul's out, I think those top three will all be within 3, 4, 5 games of each other.
And I'm going to throw something else here with the Warriors, too. Yes, they've been missing Draymond Green. One of the things that Bill and I have been harping on over the last couple of seasons with all the injuries is their bench guys have been able to get out there and get a lot more experience, had starter experience, which is helping them play in more big game situations. But since Clay has come back, I feel like the Warriors have not played as well as they did as they started the season. I feel like Clay's having a hard time acclimating himself back. Yes, he's had some big games. Of course, that big Saturday night game on ABC against the Lakers where he hit some clutch shots where Steph was not in this vicinity of playing well. And here comes Clay being able to just do it. But I just feel like the Warriors have been a little off. They started off really hot, and I felt like they cooled down because they were battling it out with Phoenix in the beginning of the season for that top spot. Now they're 6.5 back. And we're talking about that. And, of course, we mentioned the Grizzlies, and Bill just talked about the Jazz. Look, the top 6 is rounded out by the Mavericks and the Nuggets, and then the play-in teams are the Timberwolves, the Clippers, the Lakers, and the Blazers. We know what the Blazers are. The Blazers are just putrid, and they're there because someone needs to be that number 10 seed. I still think San Antonio can beat them, but Portland's won their last 4. The Lakers are 4 games under 500. Very interesting to see LeBron struggle this way. Clippers 1 game under 500, and Minnesota 3 games over 500. Minnesota makes it to the playoffs. They're having a championship parade. That was already officially announced. The Timberwolves just don't win anything. Karl Anthony Towns has already announced that he's getting his jersey retired since he won the 3-point shootout. So I think that's just the way it is. And it's funny too. Like we talk about like Minnesota not winning anything. For the NFL, I feel it's like the Detroit Lions. I sent a meme out through our little Back Sports page chat. They retired a banner saying our former quarterback just won the Super Bowl, and that was the banner that was hanging up in their stadium. I think that's something like Minnesota would do. So I just looking at some of those teams on the bottom half, the 5 through 10. Can there be a dark horse in this situation?
I just don't see it myself. I mean, are the Lakers going to get healthy and figure it out? We're an awfully long way into the season for some epiphany to happen and that to work. I don't see that at all. Clippers, of course, overachieving considering Paul George and Kawhi. Kawhi's another one of those guys. Is he hurt? What does anybody know? No one.
I'm more shocked when Kawhi's healthy.
Only his uncle knows, and his uncle doesn't tell anyone. So, which is why San Antonio booted him. The Spurs are playing inspired basketball. If you look at the point differential stat, that's one of my favorites. They have the smallest point differential stat in the league. They lose every game by 1 basket. And it's because they don't have that closer quite yet. DeJounte Murray might be that guy. He's getting closer. But Popovich also is playing for the record. And anyone who watches this show regularly knows that this guy thinks he's the greatest head coach of all time. So for him to also have that the win total over Don Nelson, who had to lose 10,000 games to win the games that he won.
That's true.
So when you got a team that's every night trying to win it, San Antonio, if you sleep on them for 3 minutes, they're going to beat you. So if they got in, are they going to do anything in the playoffs? I think the West if Phoenix is healthy, Phoenix is going to win the West. There's a team that can challenge them. It's the Golden State Warriors healthy. And then you got Memphis and Utah hoping those other 2 teams aren't healthy. I think that's basically about it.
Yeah, it's Phoenix and the Warriors. Then you have Memphis and Utah, and then it's everybody else. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
I think I think a real sleeper here, and this is so out there because odds are he won't be back this year. I think the Pelicans are an interesting team to look at. Not to like shock the world and beat the 1 seed, but as a team that could sneak into the play-in, sneak into that 8 seed, and I'm fully buying into the thought process. LeBron might not even make the playoffs. They have one of the hardest schedules. Their team's not figuring anything out anytime soon. I think if I had to give, if I had to give you one team in the entire West that could just shock the world, it would require some help from like the health gods. If the Clippers can work up to the 6th seed and play the Grizzlies in the first round, assuming they have Paul George back by then, I could see them winning that. And by the end of the playoffs, they might get Kawhi back. And then they become a really deep roster.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of ifs, and that's probably not going to happen.
You lost me at Paul George coming back.
Team. Yeah.
You lost me at Paul George coming back.
Likely than Kawhi. I mean, I think. But the Pelicans, you make an interesting point, but you're counting on Zion, and Zion, Shaq. Like Zion, he's gained so much weight that even if he were to, the rumors, of course, he's just going to tank, literally tank.
He's literally going to tank,
or whatever. I just don't know. They've got a team that's put together with Brandon Ingram and the rest of that group. They're very interesting. If Zion were healthy and at playing weight and good, that's the piece that everything else is built around.
I think a future issue for the Pelicans is that they're somewhat trending in the Hawks no defense train. They got, who's that former Hornet, their point guard? Who's their starting point guard? I'm blank. They got McCollum's very undersized for a 2 guard. Ingram very skinny for a 3. I don't know what we can expect from Zion.
I don't think you can expect much from him.
What is his name? It's not Mitchell. It's.
I'll tell you right now. Give me 1 second. I'm almost there.
Devontae Graham.
Oh, Graham start. Oh, yeah. That's right. He's actually tough on 2K. He's tough.
I just like their roster. It's not a this year roster, especially if Zion is just going to be the lard that he is right now. But they got an interesting future.
He is going to get back in shape and get into game form when it's time for a contract or it's time for him to get traded. I think because he wants to play in New York. I don't know why. He wants to play for the Knicks, and I don't know why. He wanted it. He was Bill. I think you remember when they were doing the draft lottery for that year, and the Pelicans won. You saw Zion's face. He wanted no part of New Orleans. He did not want to be there whatsoever.
And then he discovered the beignets at Cafe Du Monde. Now he's happy.
When he first went on to Bourbon Street, nobody would serve him because he was underage. Right. But with that being said, you're looking at, we just pretty much broke down the whole entire league. So if we can summarize it best, in the West, it's Phoenix, Golden State, and everybody else. With Memphis winning the Most Improved Team award out of all those teams. Mm-hmm. And we all agree that LeBron James is really in trouble. And you guys can't tell me that if they don't make the playoffs or if they get eliminated during the play-in tournament, that LeBron is not going to do everything he can to get out of LA.
Mm-hmm.
Over in the East, it's funny on how Miami and Chicago and Cleveland are right now record-wise the best teams in the conference, but we're all still talking about Milwaukee, Philadelphia, and Brooklyn. I think that is a very telling tale, and the Knicks are still the Knicks, and they're never going to win again for another 100 years.
Yep, I think the sleeper team there is Chicago. The way DeMar DeRozan is playing, I mean,
but
oh my God, he's MVP.
But here's the problem, Bill. We've seen this out of him in Toronto.
Yep.
When he went to San Antonio, he was not the same guy. Maybe he was singing "It's So Hard to Say Goodbye" and had a picture of the Toronto Raptors logo on his wall because he really suffered when he left Toronto. He did not play well in San Antonio, and maybe
came out. The story came out that his dad was dying in Los Angeles. He was sort of in a comatose state, and DeMar was flying to Los Angeles after every game and coming back in time for the next game and spending the rest of the time with his dad for quite a long period of time.
Well, that explains it then.
And then when now, unfortunately, his dad has passed and he is now back to being focused on basketball. I think once that story came out, it truly explained to me what happened in San Antonio, because the pieces were much better than the record, and DeRozan was much better than what he looked like there. And now you see how he's playing. Now that he's past that, that's what makes me say, this is DeMar DeRozan being Batman, and he's got a hell of a lot of help around. I mean, a lot of help. Variety of help too. Low post help, wing help, shooting help, defensive help. I like that team a lot. I think there's a couple of huge stumbling blocks, but if a surprise team is going to come out of the East, it's Chicago.
And I'll throw one thing out there too. I think, and this is a good question for both of you guys. We didn't really spend a lot of time talking about the Miami Heat, and Bill and I both said when fully healthy, that team can be a dangerous team around the whole entire league. But I'll be honest with you, since the NBA Finals appearance 2 seasons ago, we really haven't seen Jimmy Butler be Jimmy Butler.
No, he's had injuries. Go ahead, Max.
I'll just say one quick thing. Everyone can say everything they want about the Heat and factually back it up. They are underrated. They've been without their stars this year. They certainly should be better in the second half, realistically. I just don't like them. I don't like half their roster, first off. And I just don't see them coming out on top in this conference. I mean, they can be the regular season winners this year. They can be the 2013 Atlanta Hawks. Fine. It doesn't matter. Someone's going to beat them. They're not that lethal unless they're playing the Bucks, because the Bucks cannot figure it out against them at all. But on that note, as long as the Bucks don't face the Heat, the Bucks could have 1 through 8, in my opinion, and they will make at least the Eastern Conference Finals, because this team is arguably better than last year's team. Maybe, of course, PJ Tucker would be great to have still. This team is arguably better. Grayson Allen, huge step up from Dante DiVincenzo, in my personal opinion. And Bobby Portis is doing the best he can at center position. Once Brooke comes back and we have a true post guy again, the Bucks will be a very multifaceted team and lineup. Sleeper player in the entire Eastern Conference is Jordan Nora. He's having a great season. He's looking like he's going to be a Robert Covington type of player in his career. Mm-hmm. But I just have to tie one bow on my Cavs team real quick. So confusing. It's just this team does not make sense because, first off, in the modern NBA, there are no teams. It's individuals leading a group of guys, except for the Cavs. The Cavs are the only team in the entire association, and I'm so confident in that. They rely on nobody, and they rely on everybody. Outside of Darius Garland's points is one of the most needed things for that whole team, because no one on that team shoots well except for him and maybe Kevin Love or Cedi Osman occasionally. I think the thing that I cannot get over with this team, they start 3 almost 7-footers, and they're not even that good at big men's stuff. 11th most points in the paint, 17th most second chance points, 24th most blocks, 12th most rebounds. It's like they just play so confusingly and so different, and it works. I don't get it. I think they are going to be a low seed at the end of all this, and I hate to say it, I think they're going to get upset, and I think they're going to get upset pretty quickly too.
Yeah, but you have to remember, this is still progress for this organization.
Oh, no doubt.
Because up until, the first time LeBron left, they had a gap till he returned. They didn't make the playoffs. LeBron left again. They haven't sniffed 500. This is a team now that this is their more than a handful of games over 500. They're playing competitive basketball. This is the Atlanta Hawk team from last year, who's surprising people, and they're stealing some wins. Maybe they shouldn't have the right to win.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's going to come back next season, where they're going to come back as a target for everybody, and it's not going to be as easy for them. That's where JB's Bickerstaff's really going to show his coaching chops next year, keeping this team as motivated as they were this year. But I think that they're playing us versus the world basketball right now, and it's working.
I'll just say one more quick thing, then I'll cut it off. They do have one of the best defenses in the NBA, like without a doubt. Their defense is amazing. They hold 102.5 points per game for their opponents. That's incredible, really. And like you were saying, outside of the LeBron eras, this is the first time they've ever had a true identity since Michael Jordan over Craig Elo. Like, this is just – it's a great step forward.
Yeah, and when your identity before that is Jordan over Elo, that's not the identity you want to have.
No.
Nance, they had a good team back then.
No, they did. I think Mark Price is very underrated in NBA history.
Something interesting about, they're just a very confusing team, and that works during the regular season. But in a 7-game series, the other coach figures that out. Anymore.
For a regular season award, though, Coach of the Year should be Bickerstaff.
Yeah, I agree.
It usually never is the guy who's able to turn a team around, though. It's never a guy that can turn a team around. So I will finish it off with this, and I think Bill, you will agree. It's nice to be back on, and Max, we were glad that you were able to join us as a member of Back Sports Page and come on and talk hoops with us. You're doing a tremendous job. Keep it up. He's moving up in the sports world, so keep an eye on him. So Max, thanks for coming on the show. Why don't you let everybody know where they can find you on social media?
Thank you very much. My socials are on Facebook, which is where I post most of my articles. My Facebook, I believe, is just Max Rundy. I don't know how to use Facebook, and yet I use it the most for posting content. But I'm starting to work up my Twitter right now, which is Max_Rundy. But look for more in the future for sure.
Mr. Ingram, as always.
Well, as always, if I'm writing about the NBA, it's at backsportspage.com. I'm on Twitter at the Rocket Guy, where I tend to spend more time talking about my team that's currently locked up because baseball can't figure out.
No, not them.
We have talking about the Astros and politics and NBA quite a bit too. But yeah, pretty much mixed bag on Twitter. But I spend more time there than I do on I don't really spend too much time on Instagram and
something Graham, yeah. Something Graham and Insta.
Yeah,
Insta something and Twitter and stuff like that. And
did you see my okay, do I have that app? Oh yes, I do. Okay, let me go and I'll like it. Okay, there, I like it. TikTok is the one she's always doing something.
And I'm at Randy BSP, Twitter and Instagram. I'm on Facebook, of course, backsportspage.com, and my other 45 podcasts that I do every single week. So with that being said, guys, thanks for tuning into our Hardwood Huddle. We will see you next week as we keep the hoop talk going as we head into the NBA playoffs and to the NBA finals. See you next week, guys.
Thanks.